With talent on loan from God, it's Rush Limbaugh, the EIB network, and the fastest 3 hours in media. We are back at it. Great to have you here. And once again, the telephone number, 800-282-2882. Ladies and gentlemen, when I first attempted to explain my questions and interpretation of what's going on, I sought to use an analogy. And it was 2 weeks ago now. And I was bouncing off a piece by Daniel Greenfield at Front Page Nag called The Civil War is Here, which I'll get to in just a second. This analogy, I got more feedback on this than I've had in a long time about anything from people who said that did more to help me understand who the left is and who you're talking about than anything I've heard recently. I want to run through it again because it's ideal today, the news being what it is, with a special election in Georgia, the news about how vacant and empty the Democrat Party really is, how the Democrat Party is not the energizing agent behind the anti-Trump movement, the anti-America movement today. They're simply willing participants in it. They've ceded control to the media and academia. But for all of this time that this has been going on, one of the things that I have been doing as host of this program for 30 years, it'll be 30 years in August, and one of the things that I've been doing is constantly seeking the simple explanation, because I believe there is one, a simple explanation of the left. Not only for me, but for you, the audience. And I've come up with many attempts, done many attempts in many various ways of explaining it, gotten close, but I've never in my own mind really nailed it. Because it is complex. But one of the things I try to do is make the complex understandable. And the thing that I had noticed above all else in this current go-round is how the left is refusing to respect any authority. And I don't mean police authority and disciplinary authority. I'm talking constitutional authority. As I said yesterday, it's a miracle that we are still the country we were founded to be. We're the only country so founded. We're the only country founded on the premise that the people of the country run it and that they are created in freedom. And that the natural yearning of this God-given creation is the pursuit of happiness and life and liberty. No other place on earth has ever enshrined its existence as such. And we have a piece of paper, multiple pieces of paper that define this, decree this. And for hundreds of years, 200 plus years, every leader we have had has respected the authority and the uniqueness of the Constitution. And it's amazing to me that we haven't lost it in this period of time. It's amazing to me that in our 200 and some odd years, we have not elected somebody who literally didn't respect the Constitution, tore it up, threw it aside, and created a tyrannical dictatorship, which is the history of humanity in the world. Most people live in tyranny, live in bondage, live in poverty. United States, the lone exception, and those that we have inspired since our founding. Great Britain may be an exception, Magna Carta, but I don't want to get off in the weeds on that. You get my drift, that we have had throughout our history this silent acknowledgement that there is a greater authority that defines this country and keeps it glued together, and that is the Constitution, and that's what is at stake now. Because, folks, we are alive at a moment in our history where an entire political movement is seeking to deny and eliminate that authority. The thing that many people have feared since the founding is literally happening today. A total rejection of the Constitution, a rejection of the authority of election outcomes, the authority of any contest in which there are winners and losers, the acknowledgement that whatever our differences, we're all in this together in a common culture with common objectives, common goals, all oriented toward the preservation and growth of this wonderful country. We have lost that. And we are up against a movement now which seeks to undermine what has survived over 200 years, the Constitution and the United States. And at the top of the list of these characteristics is the total abandonment of authority. And in attempting to analogize this, a couple of weeks ago, I came up with the following expression, or monologue, if you will, and I'll shorten it here. But as I look at the American left today and the progressive movement, their rejection of all authority except theirs, the comparison is inescapable to Sharia Islam. In Islam, in Sharia Islam, there is no authority but Islam. And it is a core tenet that the ruler must be obeyed as long as he complies and enforces Islam, Sharia Islam. If he strays, then he must be killed or done away with, as in Anwar Sadat straying and making peace with Israel. He was assassinated. Now, in this analogy, if Islamists, Sharia Islamists, are in the role of Democrats today, in the role of progressives and leftists, then the rest of America assumes the role of the GOP. That is, we proclaim that our commitment to tolerance means that we have to make room at the table for everybody. We respect the authority of the Constitution. When we lose elections, we respect that that's what happens. We acknowledge that we lost. We set about trying to change whatever factors made us lose and change it, try to win. But we do not throw the system out. We don't blame the system. We don't trash the system. And we do not try to destroy the system simply because it rejected us. We try to find ways back into the winning column. It doesn't happen in Islam. You stray, you're gone. Sharia Islam. If you don't obey 1,000% of the time, you're history. Sharia Islam makes no room at their table for anybody that's not one of them. They're not interested in tolerance. They're not interested in coexistence. They're not interested in moderation. They're not interested in cooperation. They're interested in only their singular authority and investing their authority in the ruler of the day. The Islamist analogy might make it easier to understand the left. It's not that Islamists have no respect for authority. It is that they believe there is no authority outside their own belief system. There is no opportunity for debate. There's nothing to debate. You're either a believer or an infidel, and there is no tolerance for the infidels. So in the modern day analogy, there's no tolerance for Republicans. There's no interest in moderating, so the Republicans will be brought into the fold. You either accept it and do what is demanded, or you're out. Anything but you, anything but what you believe, everything is illegitimate, including Trump's winning the presidency or Mitt Romney winning or George W. Bush winning. It's all illegitimate. You respect none of it. You undermine everything that is not your authority. You overthrow it. You obey none of it. You attempt to destroy and undermine every aspect of your authority that has been shunted aside. When they are in power, the Democrats, when they're in power, they pretend it's because their beliefs are a popular mandate. When they are not in power, their beliefs dictate that they delegitimize those who are in power. And that's what we're up against today. We are up against a quasi-Sharia Islam in American progressivism. I think they're very close in methodology to terror organizations without the terror. The Democrats don't do mass murder terrorism, of course, but they do community organizing. the core tactic of which is direct action. Direct action is basically extortion by legal or illegal means. Direct action is whatever is necessary to dominate. Direct action is whatever is necessary to overthrow the authority that isn't you. You never agree with it. You never accommodate it. You never accept it. It's all illegitimate. Trump is illegitimate. His cabinet is illegitimate. Gorsuch is illegitimate. Any further judge he appoints, illegitimate. Any decision that they come up with, legalness, illegitimate. In Georgia 6, if the Democrat wins tomorrow, it's going to be said because there's a popular mandate in America that is opposing Trump and is now willing once again to embrace the authority that is represented by the Democrat Party. They might do physical threats or protests that stop people from speaking or business from operating when they lose, and they're doing that daily today. They're trying to shut down universities. They're trying to shut down free speech. They're trying to shut down any activity that is outside their authority. There is no way to cooperate. There is no way to cross the aisle. There is no way to show that Washington can work. It cannot work in their minds if they are not running it. It cannot run. It cannot work if their authority is not absolute. They do not share their authority. They do not moderate it. They do not welcome outsiders in, only if you convert. And at the same time, they do everything they can to delegitimize everybody and everything that is not them. It is only Republican presidents who are idiotic clowns and need Svengali brains behind them to make them work. For Ronald Reagan, it was James Baker. For George W. Bush, it was Karl Rove. For Donald Trump, it's Steve Bannon. Barack Obama had no such brain. He was the brain. He was the final, the only authority. Everybody who worked for him was on their knees daily, celebrating and praying and thanking and hoping he never went away. But there was nobody ever any smarter, nobody ever even equal to him, nobody ever even in his league. Republican presidents, dolts, idiots, clowns, incapable of getting out of bed without some smart guy in the back of the room that nobody sees directing the movement. And that person is never elected and therefore is illegitimate. Bannon must go. Bannon represents the greatest threat because he doesn't respect the authority of the Democrat Party of the American left, and he's guiding Trump. Trump is just an empty vessel. He's a womanizing, misogynist pig. Bannon must be destroyed. And if we destroy Bannon, we destroy Trump because we've destroyed Trump's brain. It's identical to the way totalitarian movements around the world operate, be they banana republics or massive communist enterprises like the Soviet Union or Sharia Islam. Now ponder all that. I take a brief time out here, and I'll incorporate all of this with points made by Daniel Greenfield in his now famous piece that I have made famous, Front Page Mag a couple weeks ago, and he's got a follow-up that's just as good. Well, I will also cherry pick. Don't go anywhere. We're continuing before you know it. As we said last week, the American left trying to delegitimize every branch of government. The presidency, well, that's not real. It was stolen by the Russians. Supreme Court, that's not real. Gorsuch is not real. That was stolen by changing the rule. Nuclear option. That's how it works. The American left has rejected all forms of authority it does not control. They have rejected the outcome of the last two presidential elections won by Republicans. They have rejected the judicial authority of the Supreme Court when its decisions don't accord with its agenda. It rejects the legislative authority of Congress when it's not dominated by the left. It rejected the Constitution so long ago that it hardly bears mentioning. It was for total unilateral executive authority under Obama, and now it's for states unilaterally deciding what laws they will follow, as long as that involves defying immigration laws under Trump, not following them under Obama. So, for example, Trump's new immigration law, what's springing up? Sanctuary city after sanctuary city. Even new ones are springing up in defiance of Trump, in rejection of authority, in rejection of American law, in rejection of the outcome of the election, refusal to accept it. Because there is no authority other than their own, just like Sharia Islam. The left was for the total sacrosanct authority of the Senate when it held the majority. Now the Senate is outmoded when the Republicans took over. It was all for Obama defying the orders of federal judges, no matter how well grounded in existing law, and it is for federal judges overriding anything Trump does. When they have the presidency and they have total authority, whatever the courts do is perfectly fine. When they lose the presidency and do not have the authority and refuse to accept it, then the federal judiciary must come in and deny that authority, that is the president, resulting from the authority of the election as defined by the Constitution. The election itself is not respected because of Russia and tampering. So you see how this works. There's no way to compromise with this. There's no way to accommodate it. There's no way to even tolerate it. They are not tolerant. They're the exact opposite of what they claim to be. These are the people that do not tolerate a single thing. That is not something in which they have authority. There is no form of legal authority the left accepts as a permanent institution, including the Constitution. And that's why we are on the cusp of grave danger here, which I have been trying to point out since the day after the election in November. The American left, the Democrat Party, however you want to refer to it, they only utilize forms of authority selectively when they control those forms. But when government officials refuse the orders of the duly elected government because their allegiance is to an ideology whose idea and agenda is in conflict with the president, that's not activism, that's not protest, politics, civil disobedience. Mr. Greenfield calls what is happening on the left today treason, this blanket rejection of all authority, which is derived from the Constitution. The total wanton disobeying and ignoring and undermining of the Constitution as a legal matter is indeed treason. We haven't charged anybody with it in decades. We haven't used it. We haven't barely even mentioned it. So when somebody does, it's kind of shocking. When the left loses Congress, what do? They consolidate their authority in the White House. When they lose the White House, they shifted their center of authority to federal judges and unelected government officials, the deep state. Each defeat led radicalized Democrats to relocate from more democratic to less democratic institutions, wherever they could go, to assert their authority and thwart the authority of the Constitution is where they go. And it isn't hypocrisy. Hypocrisy happens all the time in politics. That's not what this is. Hypocrites still operate within the system, respecting the authority. That is the Constitution. The left today has no allegiance to the system unless they're running it. And if they're not running it, then the system itself is illegitimate and needs to be further delegitimized. It accepts no laws other than those dictated by its ideology. And people, what happened to the Democrat Party? It's the right way to put it. The Democrat Party has become radicalized by the left. The left was not radicalized by the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party today bears no resemblance to the Democrat Party of John Fitzgerald Kennedy or even Lyndon Johnson in the 1960s. No comparison. They have been fully radicalized by radical leftists. It means that their first and foremost allegiance is to an ideology, not the Constitution. And I mean that comment aimed right between the eyes of my old buddy Ted Koppel, which I will explain in due course. So my old buddy Ted Koppel is interviewing another old buddy, Sean Hannity, for CBS Sunday Morning Show. And Ted Koppel tells Sean Hannity that the problem with Sean Hannity and people like him is that he has destroyed the news. And the way he's destroyed the news is by creating an audience of people who don't care about facts. Yeah, the only people that listen to conservative talk radio or watch Fox News, those people, they only care about ideology. They don't care about fact, and that has destroyed the media, says Ted Koppel, because in the process, there isn't a common set of facts anymore, and the conservative audience doesn't care about them anyway. The truth of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, the radicalized left is the group that has an allegiance only to its ideology and is not concerned with facts at all. They make them up if they need to support their lone authority, which is anything but the Constitution. Now, they will use the Constitution when they are in power. When they are out of power, they will ignore it, and they will delegitimize whatever part of the Constitution they need to delegitimize the opponents. They will delegitimize an election. They are nothing but ideologues, pure, thoroughbred, undiluted, raw ideologues. Facts and reality are irrelevant, particularly when the facts and the reality are counter to their authority. It's just the exact opposite of what my old buddy Ted Koppel said to Sean Hannity. Where there is an allegiance to truth and fact is right here and right now on this program and everywhere else in conservative media. It's the only place, in fact, in American media today where there is an allegiance to real facts and real news. And what we are up against is the delegitimization the left is attempting of these very facts and this very reality, the attempt to undermine it and overthrow it. And since we now stand in the way of the left's unilateral ability to define the facts, to present the facts, to ignore certain facts, we have become an enemy which must be delegitimized. We must be undermined. We must be attacked and ridiculed and overthrown. And this is why a guy on the radio like me can be treated no differently than a president with real, genuine power, with profiles done designed to ruin reputations and so forth. That's who the American left is. And it's identical to what happens in Sharia Islam to the non-believers and the infidels. And that is what we're up against here, folks. We're not up against people who are fellow adherents to the Constitution, who have a differing point of view, with whom we might want to debate and try to find some common ground, because that is not the least bit of interest to them. We are not legitimate. We are not worthy of time. Our beliefs are not worthy of anything but being pounded into dust. And this is why I just will speak for myself. I am over it. I'm fed up with Republicans who want to cross the aisle and find some common ground and show that we can work together so that Washington can be shown to work. It's all BS. It's a suicide pact to try to get into a legitimate power-sharing agreement with these people, because that's not at all anything they are interested in. Their first and foremost allegiance is to an ideology, not facts, not the Constitution, not our country. Their allegiance is not to America. Their allegiance is not to the Constitution. They do not revere it. They do not respect it. They do not respect, nor are they in awe of our system of government. All of those things, the Constitution, the country, our system of government, are only to be used as vehicles for advancing their ideology and their authority. And this is why it's impossible to compromise with them. Our system of government was designed to allow different groups to negotiate their differences. But those differences were supposed to be based around finding shared and common interests, such as the values ordained in the Declaration, for example. The most profound of these supposed shared interests was that of a common country based around central civilization values, a common culture found nowhere else in the world. The left isn't interested. The left is in the process of replacing these founding ideas with completely, radically different notions and principles. The left has rejected the primary importance of America. And in place of the primary importance that is America, it is now the primary importance of their ideology, with no tolerance for anything but. As a result, the American left that you see every day protesting and rioting, objecting, resisting, they share little in the way of interests or values with us. And that's where we are, folks. That's who these people are. That's what we're up against. And that's why this election in Georgia is important tomorrow, because the outcome is not that big a deal. In the balance of powers, it's not a big a deal. Democrats win it, big whoop. But that's not how it's going to be portrayed. I just saw CNN. Verdict on Trump presidency, Georgia election. When I say the election tomorrow, I mean we're going to get the results tonight, the media coverage tomorrow. When I say tomorrow, I'm talking about the way this is going to be portrayed. The election's going on right now. Hopefully people are showing up in droves and not voting for this Democrat, because this election is not at all going to be reported on as the balance of power. If the Democrat loses, it will be portrayed. It doesn't mean anything. It's just one seat. The Democrats weren't going to change anything by winning this seat. If the Democrat wins, it's going to mean everything about Trump no longer is real. Everything about Trump is now delegitimate. It's going to be said that the American people all voted in Georgia. The spirit of the country voted, and it rejected Trump, and it admitted it made a mistake, and it now wishes it had the election over. America wishes Hillary was in the White House. That's going to be the message, and more. If this Ossoff guy wins, it looks like a long shot to get 51% in such a crowded field. But all the money is from outside the state. All the energy is from outside the district for the Democrat. There isn't any energy in this district for the guy, not much. It's all from Hollywood. It's all from Washington. It's all from San Francisco, a lot of it from Silicon Valley. But there isn't much energy for this guy who doesn't even live in this district and can't even vote there. There's no energy for this guy where this district actually is. But his victory wouldn't even be his victory. This would be a victory of the American left. They will totally claim that victory. This guy is going to become a vessel. He's going to become a placeholder. He's not going to become a hero. The coverage, the way it's presented, will be heroic, and what it's said to represent. They're setting it up now as this election is a verdict on the Trump. Now, they put a question mark after it. They're hedging their bets at CNN because they're not sure the guy's going to pull it off. But if he does, the stories are written, I guarantee you. Be back. Get back to your calls after this. Don't go away. Welcome back, folks. Great to have you here on the Rush Limbaugh program. Remind me, I'm going to make a note myself. Hey, Siri, remind me to mention the Seton Motley piece tomorrow.
Okay, I'll remind you.
All right, now you have to remind me, Mr. Snerdley, what is it? He's got a brilliant piece here on what the new direction of the media is. And essentially, the media is no longer just doing what they're doing for public consumption. It's for social media consumption. The media is doing and writing and broadcasting what it does to get the treatment of viral spreading on social media. So the media catering to Silicon Valley now. that the real amplification of the news is on social media. I'm really paraphrasing this. That's why I'll spend time tomorrow detailing this. Marshall in Warminster, Pennsylvania. Welcome to the program, sir. It's great to have you here.
Hello, Rush. Thank you for taking my call. I just listening to you stating that the Democrat Party has no leadership now. And my question to you is, when you're developing a dependent class, how can you create leadership out of this kind of a situation?
I wanted to take your call because on the surface, it's a very good question. Here's his point. The Democrats as a party have been cultivating sponges, cultivating people who don't work, but instead are dependent, cultivating poor people who are minorities, maybe illegal immigrants, under the wild hope that they can all be registered to vote and have a majority of these kinds of people voting in every election, thereby, because they're totally dependent on government, which means Democrats, so you have them for their entire lives. And his question is, once you cultivate that as your base, from where do you get your leaders? Where do you get your actual intellectual, intelligent leaders if you're not creating any in your base? If instead what you're doing is creating a bunch of dependent, mind-numbed robots. And as I say, it's a good question, but the universities are always going to produce almost like an assembly line. Particularly the Ivy League is always going to be producing. Well, at the point, not all of them are electable. I mean, if you look now, the reason the question is important because here you had Obama, he was their savior. I mean, he was God. There was no Svengali, there was no Bannon, there was no really smart guy directing Obama. He was it. And human nature, when Obama's there running everything, they weren't planning for when there wasn't going to be an Obama, even though they knew there wasn't. And now their top two figures are Crazy Bernie and Elizabeth Warren for the next presidency. Where is their bench? Who makes up where are the young, energetic Democrats? They're there. They're out there. They're in the progressive movement somewhere. But I do think they have electoral problems because the Democrat Party, folks, let's face it, the Democrat Party is losing. I know some people are bored with me pointing this out, but look, it's relevant here. It was Obama that was rejected in November. It was Obama's policies, and he put them on the ballot by campaigning for them. He went out campaigning for Hillary, saying her election would continue his great presidency, and it was rejected, and it was sent packing. They've got problems with their real policy agenda. It is rejected when people know what it is and have that chance. And until they get leaders with a different agenda or can lie what the agenda as well as Obama did, then they're going to be in the woods. Mr. President, just say no. Trump's top aides huddling today to discuss whether or not the U.S. should remain part of the Paris Climate Accord. Mr. President, the answer is no. Get nowhere near climate change. Please, the answer is no. doing what I was born to do. Rush Limbaugh hosting on the radio. And the most listened to radio talk show in the world. It's great to have you here. I'm going to spend a little bit more time getting back to the phones. I have been a little phone light so far today, but after the opening monologue section here, we're going to zero in on the phones a little above normal, because I start feeling a little guilt. I mean, I invite people to call here, and they end up, some of them on the hold for 2 hours, and I really appreciate that, so I'll do my best to get to it quickly. I've got a story here, CNBC. Millennial women are worried and ashamed of out-earning their boyfriends and husbands. You don't believe it? You don't buy this? Oh, what? They're never satisfied. Is that the... Oh, well, let's look at some of the details here. I've given you the headline. Here's the lead of the story. And remember, we're talking about millennials. And that's anybody... Essentially, just think of 18 to 34 right now, and you're pretty close to capturing the whole demographic, at least the adult portion of it. It's no longer rare for women in relationships to out-earn their husbands or boyfriends. Wait a minute. But I thought it is. Didn't Hillary Clinton, doesn't every Democrat campaign, didn't Obama go out of office whining and moaning that women still only earn 73 cents for every dollar a man earns? Isn't that part of the Democrat Party platform? Isn't that etched in stone in the drive-by media that women are forever getting the shaft in every way you can imagine, including compensation? So how does this story even happen? When did it happen that women started out-earning men? Why did nobody tell the media? Why did nobody tell the Democrats? That's what it says here. It's no longer rare for women in relationships to out-earn their husbands or boyfriends. In 2015, for example, 38% of American wives made more money than their husbands, but many women remain ambivalent about being breadwinners, reports Ashley C. Ford, a woman writing for Refinery 29. Ford, who is herself unbothered about making 70% more than her own male partner, tries to understand why so many of the millennials she speaks to report feeling concerned or even ashamed about the repercussions of their success. The feedback that Ashley C. Ford got is clear. Men should be earning more so that they can provide for their families. And if they don't, it's symptomatic of a problem. These messages produce an almost unavoidable emotional, psychological consequence, she writes. Women feel guilty, men feel emasculated. Isn't this what feminism wanted? Isn't this exactly one of the many things feminists went on the warpath about, starting in the late 60s and early 70s? So look at this. Women earn less. It's a problem. They only earn 73 cents for every dollar. We fixed it. Now women earn more. It's a problem. Women are feeling guilty. Women are feeling ashamed. So what do we do now to fix this? You know, this dovetails. We've had a couple stories in the last 2 weeks about millennial women wishing they could be housewives, wishing they didn't have to work, preferring to be at home and be mothers and raise the kids. They don't want to have babies and then have to keep working. And I think those stories are inseparable from this. If you are a millennial woman and you want to stay home, your hubby had better be doing okay. If you don't want to work, if you want to be, Hannah Homemaker with the 2.8 kids and a picket fence, then Lughead better be out there doing okay. Otherwise, you can't afford to do that. Now, I don't want to cause any unnecessary angst out there, but I want to remind everybody that I predicted this very thing years ago. I predicted so much of what has come true regarding feminism and what the consequences of everybody kowtowing to these lunatic left-wing women was going to end up being. And I'll tell you when I noticed this, when I saw that college enrollment had shifted dramatically and more men were not going, and more women were, and then the curriculum at these universities began to switch in favor of the women. So we got all kinds of gender studies, race studies, women's studies, and we got less and less of a curriculum that had any interest for men. And that's when I began the whole phrase chickification of this, chickification of the news, chickification of the media, chickification of the academy, colleges, and so forth. And this is just a natural progression. And I also predicted that there'd be hell to pay if this day ever came, when women, as a rule, began to out-earn their husbands. It was going to be bad for men. Remember the old adage? Folks, there are just certain things that are part of human nature that have been part of human nature since the beginning of humans. And when you upset them, it's not necessarily progress. And you study any period of anthropology and social science, and you can't escape. You might want to ignore it, and you might want to say you wish it weren't true. But you go back to the Butt Sisters era of the Paleontologic effort, and you have the hunter-gatherers, and you've got the nurturers, and this kind of thing. And it really is upsetting the apple cart, because it's reversing roles. And now when you reverse roles, people have to start playing roles, and they have to start pretending to be what they think is expected of them. The amount of money, according to this, the amount of money that a wife or a woman earns more than her husband is not a factor. The amount is not relevant. Whether the wife earns a little bit more or a lot more doesn't matter. Just the fact that she earns more makes her think less of her husband. And that's what this boils down to. No matter how much you don't want to hear it, no matter how much you want to think we've progressed way beyond this, there are just certain things that feminism and liberalism cannot really change. And one of those things is natural-born human nature. I would submit to you that much of feminism, in fact, was founded because of the anger a bunch of women had with human nature, and we're trying to overturn it. Some of the women that the Ashley Ford here, shrug off the issue. A few wish their partners earned more, but wouldn't want them to take unfulfilling jobs. Others, like her, wish instead the culture would catch up with the idea that it doesn't matter who brings home the bacon as long as the family has food. But, of course, that's not realistic. Have you heard the old saw about how men define themselves versus how women define themselves? And the answer to this is not acceptable in modern day America. The truthful answer to that, the truthful answer to both those questions is not acceptable. Because the answer flies in the face of liberalism, progressivism, feminism, or what have you. But what's happening here is happening on both sides. Let's just take this survey and this story. Millennial women worried, ashamed of out-earning their boyfriends and husbands. Well, what this story doesn't tell you is what those boyfriends and husbands feel or think at the same time. Why would a woman be ashamed or feel worried about earning more money than her boyfriend or husband? And why, and what are the feelings of the men in these examples? How does one of these husbands or boyfriends who knowingly earns less than his girlfriend or wife, what is his self-image? What is his self-esteem? Now, in truth, the enlightened would say this shouldn't matter at all. A couple is in it as a couple. and you pool everything that comes in, and it's the gross amount that matters. It doesn't matter who's contributing to it. And that's what everybody should focus on. And if it provides financial comfort for the family, then that's all that matters here. But that ignores basic human nature. Anyway, I'm not going to take it any farther than this because there's nothing to gain by doing so. Much of this is self-explanatory anyway. The bottom line here is, how many of you ever expect to see a story like this? I mean, we do. Every campaign, we hear about how there's still so much discrimination against women. And, you know, women's studies are like race studies. They can never solve it. And women's studies have to be based on the fact that women are discriminated against. Women are victims of who? Predatory men. Mean-spirited, predatory men. All these imaginary rapists on college campus that these women and these reporters make up. The Duke lacrosse case, all these other, the University of Virginia. So if you're one of these women that out-earns your husband or boyfriend, and the news every day is how you're such a victim, and women are such victims, and men are these predators, and men are mean-spirited, and men are keeping women down, and men are denying women the opportunity, and here you must feel like quite the exception. You must feel like you're quite abnormal. I don't know. I'm doing so much better than other people. I don't feel comfortable. Oh, my God. And what's unstated here is these feelings that are reported here as shame and worry, shame to themselves. I don't think that's what it is at all. I don't think these women are ashamed of themselves. I don't think. They may be worried, but they're not ashamed of themselves. They are worried that the fact they earn more is not going to be good for their husbands or boyfriends' egos, self-esteem, or what have you. And they don't want to have to mother their boyfriend. They don't want to have to mother their husbands. In fact, they want it the other way around. At another time, this wouldn't have even mattered, but there's been so much focus brought to this by virtue of feminism, and women are victims, and men are the predators. So I thought it was just fascinating, because I don't think anybody would believe this story based on what the news, at least once every campaign is, about how unfairly women are still treated. The Secretary of Homeland Security is a man named John Kelly. And he had words yesterday. He challenged members of Congress who are critical of the Trump administration's aggressive approach to immigration enforcement. ICE, under the direction of Secretary Kelly, is really stepping it up. They are deporting. They are rounding up. Jeff Sessions has gone to the wall and said, this border is closed. You are not welcome here. It is not open. It's unlike anything we see. And all it is the enforcement of existing law. That is the only thing that's happening. The only thing different from 8 years of Obama, and in fact different from some years from Bush, is that existing law is being enforced. That's all it is. You would think that we have a bunch of power-mad people in the Trump administration implementing their own law and just randomly choosing to pick people to kick out of the country and not let them in. That's what Kelly was saying to Congress. He is a retired Marine general. He defended the work of Homeland Security employees, from immigration agents to airport security officers, saying that they're being unjustifiably maligned by critics because all they're doing is enforcing the laws intended to keep Americans safe. He described Homeland Security staff as political pawns. He was a speech at George Washington University where he said all this. And then he lowered the boom. He said the public and public officials should err on the side of assuming that the agency's employees are acting within the law. And for members of Congress who don't like the law, Kelly said they should have the courage and skill to change the law or shut up. If you're not going to change the law, shut up and stop undermining what we're doing. If you don't like what we're doing, change the law, you weasels. He didn't say weasels. I threw it in there. But that is his point. My agents are out there on the front lines. They are finally enforcing the law under the direction of the president, the attorney general. We are enforcing the law on immigration. There's nothing new out there. If you don't like it, change the law. This is what has been missing all of these years. Sanctuary cities being allowed to get away with violating the law. Federal law not being enforced. In Arizona, the governor there, Jan Brewer, implementing Arizona law that is a copy of federal immigration laws, and the Obama administration filing suit against them, claiming you can't do this in Arizona because immigration is a national, it's a federal responsibility. And the governor said, but you're not enforcing the law. We're being overrun here. And Obama said, it's not your problem. Get out of the way. You can't do this. And the court upheld for Obama. So they are enforcing the law. That's all that's happening here. And Kelly told them to shut up and deal with it or change the law if they don't like it. In a little brief out of here before we go to the break, North Korean men are not allowed to get a Kim Jong-un haircut. Thank God. One of those things is enough. We don't need a whole country. Well, the New England Patriots just wrapped their outside appearance at the White House. They've been there 5 times, as you know, and Bill Belichick, the head coach, actually said of all the 5 times, this may be the sweetest. And that just irritates the media because they think it's because Trump's there. And then the Patriots owner, Robert Kraft, with similar statements. He's a friend of Trump's. And the media doesn't like that. This is the Super Bowl championship from Boston, for crying out loud. They all should have canceled, is what the media thinks. And now with Belichick, who never gives the media the time of day, acting really happy. They never see Belichick happy. They never see. Belichick never looks like he's enjoying anything except immediately after a Super Bowl win. Regular season win, it's nothing. Doesn't count till we get to the Super Bowl. But after Super Bowl win, he's happy. Today he was happy. Made presentations of a jersey to Trump and a helmet to Trump. The media was just, don't doubt me on this, seething. They were hoping one player, just one player, would stand up and make some kind of protest out of this. I'll tell you, I'll make you a prediction. I will predict to you that somebody in the media is going to observe the Patriots' facial expression, some of the players' facial expressions, and will write stories on how the team was under oppressed pressure to show up. And you could tell by looking that many were not happy. Many were exhibiting signs of boredom and sheer disgust with where they had to be. It was clear to us analysts in the media, looking at the Patriots standing behind Coach Belichick and Trump, that many would wish they could be anywhere but where they. You watch, we're going to see stuff like this. It won't be long. And Brady not showing up, he has a long statement, family matters, family issues, but he very happy to be a member of the team, great championship, already focused on winning the next one and so forth. I'm not surprised. That's all I'll say. I know I just can't go further, folks. I mean, in some ways I'm shackled here in ways that I'm starting to resent, but it just is the way it is. Back in just a second. Righto, back to the phones in mere moments. Just a couple of sound bites here, starting with public radio in New York this morning, WNYC, the Brian Lehrer show. Brian spoke with MSNBC's All In with Chris Hayes, host Chris Hayes, about reports of sexual harassment accusations against Bill O'Reilly of Fox News. Lehrer said, do you actually compete for audience with O'Reilly in that 8 o'clock hour, or are we living in ideological bubbles in America now to the point where people who even might be watching you are not the same Americans Bill O'Reilly can hope to get, and vice versa? Did you understand my erudite and brilliant question? And if so, Could you enlighten us with your thoughts, briefly?
The center to center left of the country consume a whole bunch of different kinds of media. The other half of the country, the sort of center to conservatives, basically only consume several different outlets. So they just watch Fox or they just listen to Limbaugh and talk radio. The only newspaper whose median consumer is slightly the right of center is the Wall Street Journal. So you've got this situation in which half the audience is being divvied up amongst dozens of different entities, and half the population basically has 3 or 4 entities that have a monopoly on them. And it's actually profoundly dangerous in lots of different ways, both for, I think, the conservatives and the right, also for American democracy.
Yeah, see how dangerous it is. Profoundly dangerous that you people in this audience are only listening to me and maybe a couple or 3 other outlets. And that's it. That's profoundly. The rest of America totally enlightened and is listening to a wide array of diverse media, broadcast and print operations. But you conservatives are causing a profound danger in lots of different ways, which is, of course, threatening democracy. And this is right off of the Ted Koppel take, which is that you people don't listen here for facts. You don't listen to be informed. You don't listen. You listen here because you're nothing but ideologues. You're nothing but conservatives, and that's all you want to hear is conservatism. And if you don't hear it, you go somewhere else where you can, and that's all you care. But their audience is made up of the widest array of intelligent people who are genuinely interested in the facts. And this guy's got it exactly backwards. I would submit that people who listen to this program get both sides of every issue. That's how I explain the preference of conservatism. That's how I explain the dominance and the correctness of conservatism, by explaining to people what the liberal position is. And I do it honestly. They don't even do that. And they never talk about it. There's a survey that I just... Who did the survey? I can't put... it was Ad Age. Ad Age, big trade magazine, advertising business. And they went out there and they surveyed groups of people to ask them, how often do you see yourself reflected in commercials and primetime TV shows? Conservative women, #1, saying we never see ourselves reflected. Homosexuals, lesbians, transgenders, liberal women, they're all over the place. They see themselves everywhere and all the time. Conservative women never see themselves reflected. And that is exactly right. Conservatism is not explained on MSNBC, where Chris Hayes works. Conservatism is not even treated with respect or even acknowledged as existing, other than an infirmity and an inanity. This guy's got it exactly backwards, and there's a reason why they have no audience. They're the ideologues. They're the tunnel-visioned ones. They're the ones with no wide array of subject matter. They are the ones who toe the line on a very narrow list of items that are almost all related, not to even building up conservatism, but by destroying whoever their enemies of the day are. That's all they do. That's all they are. And there are not facts. They claim the facts, and they claim that they have a common set of facts, and if everybody would use those facts, the country would be much better. They're all propaganda. Modern American media is nothing more than propaganda. It's the daily advancement of a liberal agenda. That's all it is. But you see, even they just listen to Limbaugh, and that's dangerous for democracy. Very, very bad. And then there's this. Last night, CNN's newsroom, the co-host was Aisha Sasay, and she's speaking with Dylan Byers, CNN's senior reporter for media and politics, about Trump's decision not to label the Chi-Coms currency manipulators. You know, he once did. Then this thing with the Norks came up, and Trump dropped criticism of the Chi-Coms as currency manipulators. So the host here plays a clip of Trump telling Fox News that he hasn't softened his stance on China, that they're just helping us deal with the Norks right now. The CNN hostess says, Dylan, what do you make of this? Trump is saying, I need China for North Korea, so I'm now not going to turn around and call them currency manipulators. Didn't he know that when he was on the campaign trail that you can't do this kind of flip-flopping?
This is actually a very interesting test of Trump supporters and how far they're willing to go with him. There are a lot of people out there, including influential people in conservative media, Rush Limbaugh, folks like that, who are willing to accept the president's explanation here. Well, I can't go after China for currency manipulation because I need them for North Korea. I always said I was going to bomb the expletive out of ISIS, so that's why I went into Syria, even though many of you were not voting for an interventionist president. These, call them excuses, if you will, or arguments, they actually resonate with some members of Trump's base. There are other members of Trump's base who aren't having it. They feel like they've gotten the bad end of the deal. And so there's an interesting war playing out there.
Yeah, and by the way, as it relates to me personally, I happen to know that there are many people in the so-called conservative media who do accuse me of this very thing, of being a Trump apologist. And somebody willing to accept whatever Trump says. And this also is done by way of knee-jerk reaction. And it's also coming from a deep state of being uninformed. Trump never said he wasn't going to hit Syria. Trump talked about bombing the executive out of ISIS all day long. He talked about taking them out. Nothing Trump is doing is a big surprise. Some Trump people don't like the idea he bombed Syria, went after Syria and all that. But I think what they miss about Trump is, well, I know they do. They think he's so stupid and so inexperienced that they do not even consider that Trump's public statements that may be at variance with each other from day to day could well be strategic. You remember, you may not, I'm going to remind you that one of the presidential debates, Trump went on a riff of really ripping Obama and Hillary for telegraphing in advance when they were going to hit ISIS one day, when they were going to hit this and me. And for why in the world would you do it? It makes no sense. It's stupid. This is the kind of stupid leadership we've got. If you're going to have a major military assault, you don't tell them when. You don't promise them when you're coming so they get ready for it. You surprise them with it. And Martha Raddatz blew her mind. Martha Raddatz was exasperated because first Trump was attacking Obama. That's a no-no. And she said, don't you understand psyops? Don't you understand psychological operation? Don't you understand Obama could have been lying about it? Don't you understand? You're just so small-minded you don't understand. Psychological ops. Trump's engaging in that very thing, and there's no way they can even consider it. It doesn't even strike them. Anyway, I can take a break here, and then we'll come back, zero in on the phones here on the EIB network. Do not go away. Fox News has made it official. It's been obvious and unofficial for a couple days, but now official with a memo from Rupert Murdoch that Bill O'Reilly is out at Fox and will not be returning even for a goodbye broadcast to the Factor audience. And so the drive-bys are going to be feasting all over this. So get ready for it. And as usual, what's really going on here is, well, we'll see if it's uncovered. In the meantime, Joe in Festus, Missouri, it's great to have you here. Glad you called. How you doing, sir?
Liberal greetings from a graduate of Mark Scully University of Cape Girardeau, and I'm a Vietnam veteran. And I wanted to weigh in on what happened with this so-called victory for the Democrats last night.
Yeah.
I'm not impressed with it at all. And the reason is I started checking where this money was coming from for him. First thing I noticed was the Caliber charter schools. The biggest mistake made by Democrats, specifically Obama, in the last 8 years was when he brought in Bill Gates and Arnie Duncan and trashed public education by starting this privatization. Now, DeVos is pretty much a mess, but at least people recognize that. They thought Bill Gates, well, he must know everything. And so that's my viewpoint as a liberal from Missouri. And
I need to ask you to clarify something for you. You think that charter schools are bad, and that Obama signing on to them with Bill Gates and Arnie Duncan was what it angered Democrats, like a sellout of public education and the teachers' unions? What was bad about it from your
a lot of the nasty secret to the billionaires is that our teachers in the classrooms are very good people that are doing a good job for the most part.
In the public schools,
problems.
You mean in the public schools?
Are a source, usually for Democrats, not completely, of course, but usually for Democrats, teachers are a source of energy and organization and getting out the vote, raising the vote totals. Instead of 62% or 59% turnout, you get a larger turnout, and they stand for things that help families. And so I think that was the biggest mistake, bringing in Arnie Duncan and Bill Gates. The charter schools are bad for two reasons. One, the good ones, and there are some good ones, do a lot of cherry picking and don't carry their fair share of the more difficult students. A lot of them are just very bad schools that are dumping grounds that use Teach for America and very not experienced teachers that are likely to not cost them much and be gone within 2 or 3 years.
So when they invest in the charter schools, both financially and ideologically, they're selling out the public schools and all the get out the vote efforts that teachers engage in. They're underselling the teachers and this kind of thing. And you think that had a lasting effect in this election last night?
Oh, I think it's been the most dominant thing mistake that the Democrats have made in the last 8 years.
Are you a teacher?
I thank you and your guy that made the point about how much we've lost in legislatures. They don't just affect national elections. These charter schools are buying people every which way.
Wow, this is a fascinating theory. I wish I'd have had a chance to get to your call sooner today, because you're the first guy I have ever heard say that the Democrats' root problem here, or one of them, is the sellout of public education in favor of charter schools by bringing in Bill Gates, who I thought was into mosquito nets, and Arnie Duncan. So, well, look, I appreciate the call. Joe, think about giving Mr. Snerdley your number. Maybe on an open line Friday I'll call you back when I have more time, because I'm really curious about it. You sound serious, and I'd like to drill down deeper and unpack this a little bit more with you if you ever have the time and chance. Thanks for the call. Man, this week has gone by so fast, I feel like tomorrow's Friday, but it's not. Tomorrow's Thursday, the Open Line Friday Eve. And I have a stack here of things today that I didn't get to the Seton Motley piece that I intended to, which I'm going to do. It's about where the real media capital is today and what media's real objective is. Fascinating theory. Breitbart News, low Congress approval ratings weighing heavily on Republicans. I'm sure it is. They're stymied here over Trump. They don't know what to do. It's all related to establishment Washington's conundrum over how to deal with Trump and how long he's going to survive. More on that. We see you tomorrow. The views expressed by the host of this program may not necessarily reflect the views of the staff management of this station, but they should, and someday will. Rush Limbaugh at the Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Anti-Leftist Studies. Telephone number 800-282-2882. The first gay mayor of Seattle. His name is Ed Murray. He has just dropped out of the re-election race amid allegations that he sexually abused young men. What? Well, that's what it says. But, you know, this is just the tip of the iceberg. This guy, you want to talk about a kook? This guy is a full-fledged, unadulterated, undiluted, raw kook. I hold here my formerly nicotine-stained fingers, a story from Reason magazine. Seattle mayor proposes soda tax to fight white privilege. A soda tax, Brian, like Coke, Pepsi, to fight white privilege. Determined to silence local critics who have suggested he is not America's most progressive mayor, Seattle's Ed Murray has packed so much conflicted social justice into a simple soda tax that no one in Seattle is quite sure what to make of it. After it was suggested to him that his proposed 2 cents an ounce tax on soda sweetened with sugar. Let me go at this a different way. This guy proposed a 2 cents an ounce tax on soda sweetened with sugar. Some of his advisors said, Mayor Murray, that's unfair. This tax burden will be borne disproportionately by the poor and people of color. Because, you see, it is the poor and people of color who buy soft drinks sweetened with sugar. So the mayor, Ed Murray, lowered the tax and then applied it to all sweetened drinks, including diet soda. The theory is that diet drinks were more likely to be consumed by upper middle class white people. And so the issue had become for him an issue of equity, a way to tackle white privileged institutional racism. So in Seattle, it is presumed that if you buy Diet Coke, Diet Pepsi, Diet Sprite, Coke Zero, Pepsi Light, whatever it is, you are part of an institutionalized white privileged racism. You are a white privileged racist if you drink diet soda, because the Trayvon Martins and Michael Browns of the world drink regularly sweetened soft drinks. And it would be unfair to have a tax on drinks sweetened only by sugar because of who predominantly buys them. Supposedly. Now, Mayor Murray had originally proposed the soda tax during his State of the City address last February. He said he hoped to raise $16 million in his first year to fund everything from an additional year of early public education to subsidies for food stamp recipients to shop at farmers markets. Food stamps are already a subsidy. Does anybody not get that? Subsidies for food stamps so that the recipients can shop at farmers markets. Now, the rationale for this was to dramatically reduce the consumption of unhealthy products. This was to be an attack on health problems, primarily obesity in Seattle. The tax would pay the second dividend in better educations and economic opportunity. Healthy kids get better educations and they're more likely to have a brighter future. Does this mean that kids drinking regular Coke and Pepsi are destined for failure or a blighted future, and people drinking diet drinks are slated for a more upper-class existence, and that just isn't fair. This is the way this guy thinks. Well, the detractors came out of the woodwork, and they started claiming that this progressive mayor was actually instituting a very regressive tax. And the mayor got defiant at an April 27th press conference. He said, you know what is really taking money out of African-American communities? Tolerating an educational system that is failing kids of color every day, leaving them without a future, and giving them food that will only lead to health problems. Oh, speaking of that, how many of you have grown up believing that salt is the Autobahn to heart disease? Salt, you eat it and you're on the superhighway to high blood pressure, cardiac arrest, sweating a lot, obesity, and eventually you're going to need diuretics. Well, guess what? Researchers have just said that all of that is bohunk. And now it's the opposite. Eating salt is not only okay, it's necessary. Eating salt is good for you. And all of these medical maladies, high blood pressure and other things, are no longer the case. Science. Science, once again, rears its head to assure us of what it does not know. We've had a lot of news about California today, and here's yet another one. This is from Bill Whalen at Real Clear Politics. California's geriatric liberal leadership. Next year marks a century since Lulu Hunt Peters, a Californian by way of Maine, gifted the world with diet and health, the key to the calories. Ever since, California has stood at the vanguard of defying Father Time. Look no further than Orange County and the city of Irvine, home to Botox giant Allergan, or Big Sur's Esalen Institute, which is dedicated to integrating body, mind, heart, spirit, and community in a nurturing relationship with the environment. Funny thing about California, the pursuit of youth does not apply to its political hierarchy. Jerry Brown, the governor, 79. Dianne Feinstein, nation's oldest senator, turns 84 in June. House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi is 77. In other words, the state leadership of California is old and aging Jurassic Park liberal. And yet California is thought of as the state of youth and energy and hipness and cool. You know what this means? What this means is that baby boomers are just not going to go fade away into the sunset and retire and let their kids and grandkids take over. The baby boomers are going to selfishly hang on and take whatever they can for as long as they can. Dianne Feinstein, 84. Pelosi, 77. The age of the California Assembly and some of other California leaders is way, way, way above the average. And by the way, I think that has a lot to do with these aging leftists and the fact they have not changed or moderated over time whatsoever. While that's going on, you see what Trump did? His judicial nominees, 10 judicial nominees, yes, then these people are, as far as conservatism is concerned, they're almost ideal. And they're all in their 40s. And the Democrats cannot stop them. We're talking about appellate court nominees and federal district court nominees. And since Harry Reid blew up the filibuster to pack the court with Obama nominees, they don't have to kill the filibuster because it's already dead. The Democrats cannot stop these people. The only two people that can are Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. Well, if two Republicans defect, but the 60-vote rule is out. These are tremendous nominees. These are nominees who are going to be on the court for decades. And it's one of the most important things the Trump agenda can accomplish. Younger judicial nominees give Trump a chance for legacy in courts. I got a couple stories on this, and they're all raving about it. Here's the story on salt. And by the way, it's in the New York Times, why everything we know about salt may be wrong. My guess is that a bunch of liberals came up with this and all of these things from way, way back. And it just, it's kind of amazing to me. You look at Obama running around. He's getting, by the way, $3 million for this speech in Milan, Italy. And a story on the Drudge Report claims that Obama is becoming more and more active in the opposition to Trump. Not ever mentioning Trump's name, but doing everything he can to undermine Trump's agenda with speeches all over the world, which state his opinion on what's happening in America. And it's all based on the fact that Obama's the smartest guy in the room, and he's the guy with all the compassion, and he's the guy with the knowledge, and he's the guy qualified to know what the future holds, and his ideas are being undermined. Largely, this is what his speeches are about. And what is the one characteristic that you attach to Obama? Charles Krauthammer on Fox the other night said that what drove him nuts about Obama was his condescension. Now, I agree with that. I think arrogance and condescension combined in one character trait probably equal the most irritating personality traits I encounter. Arrogant, smug, condescension. And that's what I use smug to describe Obama. And I think it's a defining characteristic of all liberals. Like smug, know-it-all, arrogance. They're ignorant experts. They're experts in things that they have never, ever done. And no one does that better than Obama. For example, liberals tell everybody how to raise their kids with no evidence that they know how to do it on their own. In fact, the evidence that they don't know how is all over the place. They tout public schools as the simple best thing you can do, and they wouldn't dare send their own kids there if they have to. Private education in this country almost exists for the express purpose of schooling liberal kids. Michelle Obama, they'll tell you what to eat. They'll tell you what you're eating is unhealthy. They will demand that you only eat this. Michelle Obama devised the school lunch menu that kids were throwing in the trash and sneaking in pizza and burgers. And you know what? One of the key elements of the Michelle Obama menu was no salt. That's right. They'll tell you what to eat with no interest in food before they lived in the White House. So Michelle Obama was not a food expert ever. Food was never a cause of hers. She becomes first lady, has to become an expert in something, has to be something caring. Food became it. They will tell you they know everything about Earth's climate without any degrees, without any ability. No one understands Earth's climate, much less a has-been politician. Liberals may be many things, but they're always smug. And Obama defines it. He exudes smug. Perfect role model for smug wannabes. He knows better. He's the smartest. He's the wisest human being in every room that he enters. And the Clintons have just got to be jealous as they can be. I mean, they're out there doing speeches, 25 of them a month here for $250,000. There's Obama raking in $3 million for one speech in Milan. You imagine how jealous the Clintons are? I can just see Bill Clinton storming around. Everybody talk about how greedy I am. I went out there and I had the Energizer money and I did everything I can to raise money for Hillary Campaign Foundation and paltry $200,000 here, $10,000 over there. This guy's out there. I mean, this is the guy. I told Ted Kennedy one time, Obama's the kind of guy who used to service our drinks. Now this guy's out there making $3 million for speeches, arrogant, condescension, smug stuff. Have you heard that Clinton is writing a book with James Patterson? Did you hear about this? James Patterson, the prolific mystery writer and mystery author, lives here. I've played golf with James Patterson. I've run into him at restaurants. I can't say that he's a friend's acquaintance. Speak to him when I see him. But James Patterson and Bill Clinton are co-writing a thriller called The President is Missing. It's due out in 2018. I think it's probably based on a true story. The night of the Benghazi attack. Where was Obama? It's not enough. New York liberals say it's not enough to just say that Obamacare repeal will kill people. We must be far more visceral, says Jason Haber, a Manhattan real estate investor who started a super PAC that he said is going to host mock funerals, including tombstones, coffins, even eulogies later this month for the constituents that will be killed as a result of repealing Obamacare. Jason Habers worked in New York Democrat politics. In the age of Trump, nothing short of blunt and brute force will work as a counterweight. We cannot win based on the merit of our ideas. Nope. We have to win by delivering the message. The merit of our ideas is not going to triumph. So what he's saying is our insanity is not enough. We're going to have to demonstrate our insanity. We're going to have to illustrate how nutso we are. We're going to do mock funerals with coffins, eulogies, tombstones for people who will die because of what's happening to Obamacare. I mentioned we've added to our Democrat montage where Democrats continue to say GOP health care will kill people. Here we go. This
will cost American lives if it ever becomes law. This will mean death, pain, and suffering to people's families.
It's a life and death proposition. This bill will be devastating to the people of this country, force even more people to lose their health care.
Allowing foster care children to sleep in state offices, allowing sex trafficking and human trafficking victims to go to jail because there's nowhere else to put them.
The Trump cares mother of all bombs of health care dropped on the American people.
It isn't just wrong, it's inhumane.
They are threatening devastation in the lives of America's families. This is deadly. This is deadly.
People are going to die if this bill that got passed yesterday ever became law. I'm going to lose a lot of folks. People are going to die.
Thousands of Americans would die.
There's no question that people will not only lose their health care, but many will lose their lives.
Thousands of people die in your states. Essentially, producing policies are going to kill people. We're essentially going to be killing Peter to make sure that Paul gets his tax cut.
We're going to kill Peter to make sure Paul gets his tax cut. That's the Democrat. They think this is a winning strategy. They tried it in 1995, and it did not work. They did not add seats. The Republicans think they got shellacked and lost, but they didn't. Democrats talk like this. They do not end up winning. Here's Rachel in Huntley, Illinois. I'm glad you waited, Rachel. How are you doing?
Wow, I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for taking my call, and just thank you for all that you do. You just are such a loud, wonderful voice out there.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
My concern is yesterday you had spent a lot of time on the rape and it, you know, how the controversy over whether or not it's going to be covered. My concern is like the diabetes, the cancer, the asthma, that they are now considered pre-existing conditions, and they may not be covered because Donald Trump wants to open up cross-state lines to be able to buy insurance, and the states can opt out what they're going to cover and what they're not. So it leaves a little bit of concern of what is it going to cover? What conditions is it going to cover for us that might be affected by it?
The Republican bill has a fund of $138 billion specifically to buy insurance, which is not what this is, to buy whatever we're going to call it for people with pre-existing conditions. It was a mandated item in order to get enough Republicans to vote for it. And I don't think it's going to be tied to state activity. It's going to be a federal mechanism. Republicans are not going to take this away. I don't care what people tell you. They're not going to do that. Folks, this business that Trump's Obamacare bill is going to kill people and so forth, it's as though Obamacare was the greatest thing that ever happened and everybody is happy with it and loves it. And, of course, none of that is true. How about all the people who lost their health insurance because of the Obamacare mandates? The AP, no less than the AP, ran a story last December guessing that 4.7 million Americans lost their health insurance because of Obamacare. Now, losing your health insurance means you die. In Democrat Party parlance, you lose your health insurance, you're dead. We're going to make a coffin for you, and we're going to do a eulogy for you and create a tombstone. 4.7 million. And Obamacare is still the law of the land, and it still priced people out of the market. It has still continued to cause people harm. And something that hasn't happened, the Democrats are out now claiming people are going to die and so forth. In the meantime, Obamacare is destroying practically everything it comes in contact with for way too many Americans. This is just, all of this, the sense of proportion is just there. Listen to this. This goes right along with my idea that the media is actually running the progressive leftist agenda. Yesterday, last night, and this morning, we have a montage of people from CBS, MSNBC, ABC, Axios, the website, MSNBC again, Fox News, on the media convincing Democrats to use the narrative that there is a backlash against the GOP and this health care bill, and if the Democrats play it right, it'll carry them back to victory in election.
Republicans are trying to quell a growing backlash over the health care bill passed by the House.
Republicans are facing a backlash against Trump care.
Republicans who backed the House health care bill facing fierce backlash.
Now facing that backlash from health care advocates.
They're watching this backlash.
Already facing backlash back in their home districts.
Republicans facing some backlash from the passage of the bill last week.
What they want you to believe is it's Republicans showing up at Republican town halls that are backlashing. It's not. It's paid professional Democrat protesters who are showing up. There isn't any backlash on this other than paid political leftists who are going to protest anything and everything coming out of the Trump White House. But the narrative is set. There's a backlash. The Republican bill, America hates it. And this backlash is paving the way for Democrats to electoral victory in the next election. Last night, PBS, the News Hour, Judy Woodruff speaking with Amy Walter. She's the national editor of the Cook Political Report about the health care reform bill passed by the House. Judy Woodruff said, do we know yet whether this is a plus or minus politically for these House members?
Democrats believe that this is a potent issue for them in the election, and they remember what it was like when they were on the other side. That's the reason they think it's going to be so powerful. Back in 2010, when they were the ones voting for a bill that was controversial, pushing it through on a party line only vote, they suffered the consequences. It was a toxic vote for them. They lost 63 seats in control of the House. Democrats are convinced this is going to be that kind of issue for Republicans. There's not a lot of polling that's been out yet.
Okay, so there's the Cook Report editor. Yep, Democrats exactly right. They're going to be backlash just like there was against Democrats. There's a big difference. This bill fixes Obamacare. If this bill goes to the Senate, somehow comes out of there, if this bill, largely intact, something like it ends up on Trump's desk, the odds are insurance premiums are going to drop and drop dramatically. And if that happens, the Democrats are whistling Dixie here. There isn't going to be any backlash against the Republicans at all because the objective of this fix is to lower premiums. If that happens, it's sayonara for the Democrats yet again. It's going to be sayonara for them anyway. The Democrats are demonstrating they are so out of touch with mainstream decency in this country. It really boils down to that. They're just absent traditional mainstream decency. Their late-night comics, their daily drive-by media, primetime entertainment. They're just absent decency. And I'm telling you, great silent majority or what have you, most Americans are just offended and livid over this filth that is becoming standardized. Hell, even at Democrat rallies now, cursing is required. this Perez guy that's running a Democrat National Committee, they're all out there at rallies. They're purposely cursing because that's what their base wants. Their base is so livid, so enraged, so unhinged. They're going to find out. Speaking of the Limbaugh letter, I interviewed my brother yesterday, his new book, The True Jesus. If you have wanted to read the Bible and thought that it is just too big a project, that you wouldn't know where to begin and you wouldn't think you'd understand, that's what this book is. The True Jesus is actually a helpful guide to what's in the Bible. It's arranged in chronological order, focuses on the 4 Gospels, and will actually give you a very good lead-in head start on how to read the Bible, how to interpret it, and so forth. It just takes the daunting characteristics of cracking the Bible open and starting reading it away from. If you read this book first, you're actually going to want to dig into the Bible. I know there are a lot of people that wanted to do it and don't, for any number of reasons. Don't have the time. Once I get started, it's a commitment. I don't want to do it halfway. The True Jesus by David Limbaugh is a great first step if that describes you. The drive-by media is going nuts. Apparently, Sean Spicer, during the press briefing, referred to Sally Yates as a political enemy of the White House, and the drive-bys are going nuts. How dare you call her a political opponent of the White House? Well, she is. She probably voted for Obama. It doesn't matter. She did everything she could to undermine Trump's executive order. It's a holdover from the Obama administration. Hell yes, she's a political opponent of the White House. Half of the deep state is. Here's Joe in Valdosta, Georgia. Joe, I'm glad you waited. Great to have you on the program.
Hey, Rush. Thank you for your tribute to the greatest generation. They truly were unparalleled with their determination, their resolve. And
I think it's a phenomenal thing America was able to do.
That is true, Rush, but we paid an extremely high price for that. As well as that generation did, that generation, the greatest generation, those were the people who felt the full effects of the Great Depression. Okay, and that Great Depression was not over on a single day. Its effects lasted years. Okay?
10 years, 10, 20 years.
They produced, the greatest generation produced the baby boomer generation. Okay, they did not want their offspring to go through the hell that they went through, Rush. They wanted to make life easier for them.
That's true.
I do believe that they caused most of society's ills, not by design, just by natural parenting. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you mean. Let me phrase it in my own words. Great generation. By the way, folks, they had to grow up when they were 15. As I like to say, the greatest generation, they learned when people are still trying to sneak beer. And they had to learn life was about a lot more than them. They had to grow up fast. They were charged with literally saving the country. This is after they had come through the Depression. And after World War II is when the Soviets started promising them that they were going to bury their grandkids. And they believed, I remember my grandparents believed every word Khrushchev threatened when he was at the United Nations making that speech. And so what Joe's theory is here, that the greatest generation, because of the Depression, World War II, didn't want any of that for their kids. Now, look, I think this is a fact of every generation. I think every parent wants their children to have a better life than they did. But I know his point is they gave them things. They tried to cushion life. They didn't want their kids to have anywhere near that kind of strife. And in the process, created a generation that had plenty of spoiled people, plenty of expecting people, people with entitlements or an entitlement mentality. I understand what you're talking about. My parents wanted nothing like that. But my parents actually, primary lesson we taught was if it can happen once, it can happen again, and you need to be prepared. My dad felt that the only chance anybody had in life because of the Depression was to get a college education. If you didn't do that, and there's no way a parent could give you that. They could maybe pay for it, but they couldn't make you go. They couldn't get you the degree. They couldn't make the pass. You had to do that on your own. My dad was insistent, and I just was not interested. And it was a point of friction during those years. And he ended up feeling like a failure as a parent because I had not gone to college. Therefore, he thought I didn't have a chance. He didn't give me things like Joe was talking about here, and he didn't cushion things. I remember when I told him I got fired the first time, you would have thought I had just failed life, that nobody was ever going to hire me again. I mean, he literally spit the word, "You've been fired!" It was just, I know what he's talking about, but our parents were not that way. I don't doubt that many were. It was a natural thing, as Joe was saying. They didn't want their kids to go anywhere near that kind of hell, which is understandable. No parent wants their kid to go off to war. Fastest 3 hours in media. I can't believe it's already over, and I know that many of you are sad that it's over, that you can listen for another hour or two, and you can tomorrow. Because we will be back in 21 hours, revved and ready to go. Whatever happens between now and then, this will be the place to be. See you then. Thank you.